Hello there folks, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now today I'm going to answer a question from a gentleman about just that, being a gentleman, and one of the component parts of perhaps about being a chap in the modern world. And his Alberto here asks this question: how much does luxury have to do with being a chap or a gentleman? Whether this applies to watches, clothing or other things. I believe it has nothing to do with such things, or otherwise men who have to live by a budget in their lives could never aspire to being a chap or a gentleman. I believe other topics have to be borne in mind. And that's a really good question from Alberto there, because he's right to challenge the assumption that to be considered a gentleman, you have to surround yourself with the trappings of wealth, luxury. This term, which has no longer come to mean luxury. I remember a generation ago, luxury was something you expected only to encounter once or twice a year. Today, people take luxury as part of their everyday expectation of life, and they want to flaunt that and demonstrate it to other people. I don't think having luxurious items, high value items, is part of being a gentleman at all. In fact, the truth is a gentleman is much, much more. It is far more important to be content and to truly enjoy your life for what it is, rather than pinning your level of enjoyment on life on things that you own, on material possessions. Because the simple fact is, they are not really important, right? When you strip them away, they have little value at all to the underlying person, or as to whether he's a gentleman or a chap or not. Luxury, of course, it can be appreciated. We all like a little bit of luxury. We all like to own a luxurious thing or have a luxurious meal from time to time, but it should never be used to be the measure of a gentleman's character. Now, a true gentleman is not defined by his possessions. He is actually defined by his principles. And if you think back across history, right, some of the most admirable men who have ever lived, and let's forget about history, let's forget about famous characters. Think about people in your life who you were inspired by. Maybe your grandparents, your parents, school teachers, colleagues who were more senior, who mentored you. I bet when you drill down and think about it, they were not people who had large financial means, for whom luxury was important. These were people who displayed the qualities of honor, of integrity. They had a quiet dignity which was not born by the things that they owned. That sort of quality of a gentleman is not purchased. It is not worn like a fine suit of clothes which has been tailored for you from Savile Row, or an expensive wristwatch, or a fancy car that you've got parked outside the house, or the multiple luxury holidays that you take to the best parts of the world every year that you love to tell your friends about. All right? That has got nothing to do with being a gentleman. Luxury is truly divorced from it. So today, to help you on your journey to being a gentleman, I've got 3 actionable tips by which you can live your life as a chap with no regard to luxury at all. You might already be doing these things, so you can treat it as an audit, but let's get started. So the first thing you can do to live your life truly as a gentleman without any regard to luxury items or luxury products at all is good manners and courtesy. Because cultivating courtesy, patience and consideration for other people never goes out of fashion. I would go as far as to say that I think these qualities are the most important things that a gentleman will have in his portfolio of skills. It's like holding a door open for somebody, helping somebody up a flight of stairs with their shopping, listening to somebody who wants to talk. These things cost absolutely nothing, but they elevate you and your worth as a person exponentially. Not only that, but they elevate the people that you're showing that respect and courtesy to. You're making their lives better by showing those skills. And politeness, especially when genuine, and when it's offered with no expectation of anything in return, no personal gain, you're just being genuinely nice to somebody, I think that is by far the greatest elevation. I can tell you a little story. About a month or so ago, I was on holiday in Qatar in the Middle East, and I went down to my hotel pool one morning, and you had to sign it into the pool. The guy gives you towels and a cooler box with water in it, that sort of thing. And there was a chap in front of me. He wasn't British, but he was from another country, and he was disrespectful, discourteous to the guy, the pool guy. He clearly thought that he was more valuable and important as a human being than the guy who was serving him, providing a service for him. He just, give me the towels, give me water. And off he stomped, and he was a real grumpy piece of work. And it riled me up, right, when I saw this guy treating this pool attendant in that manner. I thought, this guy's working hard, he's doing his job, he's making me enjoy my holiday, I've got respect for him. And I said, God, what an awful way to be spoken to. Let me tell you, I appreciate what you're doing, mate, and, thanks for looking after me and my family while we're at the pool. And I genuinely meant it. But for the rest of the day that we were at the pool, every so often this guy would come around and, they make sure that you've got a fresh bottle of water, they'll bring you a slice of watermelon, whatever, while you're there for the day. And I noticed we were getting far better attention from this guy merely because I was courteous to him. I showed him respect. I didn't have to. The guy in front of me was awful in his disrespect. But I wanted to show I am better than that. I am a gentleman. I thanked him. I called him sir in our conversations. And it paid me off in the long run, even though I didn't do it to achieve that outcome. But it just goes to show, being respectful and courteous and polite, it pays off in life. Now, my next tip for you when it comes to being a gentleman without worrying about luxury costs is quite simply take care of your appearance, regardless of the budget that you are on. You don't have to drop a pile of money on Gucci or Versace to look good. You don't need expensive clothes because, a nice white shirt, I'm wearing a white shirt now, it's not an expensive one, but when it's washed and it's pressed, it looks great. I could be wearing a £600 shirt, but it looks equally as good because I take an effort to launder it and press it. My shoes, right? Even if you have only a modest budget when it comes to your footwear, if you polish them and you make them look good and you put a great shine and a luster on them, they're going to look better than a pair of Gucci loafers that somebody hasn't looked after, that are unkempt and grubby. So even if you have a modest budget, you can invest what you can and get a lot out of it just by ironing, pressing, laundering, being clean, looking good, because that little investment in your appearance outweighs the fanciness of clothing. The same goes for your personal grooming. All right. I stood behind a guy in the supermarket yesterday and he had a wonderful aroma, that just come out of the shower aroma. And I guess he put some cologne on. I dare say it wasn't an expensive cologne, but he left this wonderful impression behind him. As I was just stood there in the queue behind the guy, I thought, there's a guy who wants to go out into the world and make a good impression. And it probably cost him $5, whatever, £5, whatever cologne he was wearing, I dare say it wasn't an expensive one. You don't have to spend $1,000 to smell great or to wear good clothing. It's the investment of time that you put in it and thought. Polish your shoes, iron your shirt. It is going to look so much better. Because ultimately, who cares about the label on your clothing if it's grubby and disheveled? And who cares about how fancy you are if you stink? Even a cheap cologne is going to leave a better impression than body odor. So you don't have to have luxury items to look after yourself and your clothing. Now, my final tip for you about being a gentleman and not worrying about luxury in life is stand by your word and live with integrity in your life, because your fancy things in life will not matter one iota if you are an arsehole, all right? And I'm sorry to use Anglo-Saxon language here, but the truth of the matter is, a true gentleman honours his commitments. He has polish in the way that he speaks to people. He doesn't use bad language in public. He is nice. He is decent. He acts truthfully with integrity. These things are the undeniable foundation on which being a gentleman is built. Integrity. It distinguishes a gentleman from all of those other people out there who are, quite frankly, arseholes. You might have a Porsche, you might have a big house, you might have a lot of folding cash to splash on expensive items. But unless you exhibit those qualities of decency and integrity, you're always going to be just an arsehole with nice clothes on and with a nice car. It doesn't really matter. And decency is the most valuable asset that any gentleman will ever have in his portfolio of stocks and shares, because its value rises all the time, never dips. If you're decent, you're polished in the way that you treat people, you honour your commitments, you do what you say you're going to do, and you're nice to people without anything expected in return, they're going to remember you as a gentleman. So finally, I'm just going to answer Alberto's question. He's absolutely right. Having luxury items does not make you a gentleman in any way, shape or form. It's not a requirement. At best, it's a minor accessory on the side. You could have no budget at all. You can be dirt poor, quite frankly, but if you treat people with kindness, if you're decent, if you only own the cheapest pair of shoes in the world, but you do what you can to make them look good, you have a nice shave, you put a bit of cologne on, you do your best in the situation and you help others to the best of your ability, that's what being a gentleman is. If we think back to the original gentleman, you know, the knights of old, knights errant as they were called, who travelled around the countryside, helping the poor, doing decent things, they were the true gentlemen. But they owned nothing other than a horse, a suit of armour, and a sword by which they went about their business. You can be a knight of the modern era as a gentleman and pay no heed to luxury items at all. Just because you haven't got a Rolex or a Porsche or whatever makes no difference. You're just as much a gentleman as anybody else if you exhibit those skills. All they are people who dress the part. They don't live the part. And that's what counts. So, I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, don't forget to like, subscribe for more. Ask me a question just like Alberto did. My email address is on the screen. I'd love to hear from you. I'll offer you an answer of my thoughts just like this. If you'd like to come on the journey with me to Chap Nirvana, you can do so by looking down in the comment section below. You'll find the link to my Patreon page where I make additional videos, exclusive content for my patrons every week for a tiny monthly fee. I'd love to have you alongside me on the journey to the next stage of life. Until the next time we meet, be a gentleman, don't worry about the luxury, and I'll see you soon.